Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and today's video, like many that I've had recently, are all Palitoy Trilogos, and the prices continue to be very strong for Trilogos. Obviously, AFA/CIB had yet another round of high-grade Trilogos for sale at auction, and then I've got a couple of other sellers that had a few nice examples that I wanted to show you. But the prices continue to be very strong, and it's very tough to win any of these auctions because for the most part, the prices are going above fair market value, in my opinion. I bid on the IG88 just because that's one I've always wanted. I finished second on it, and I bid a pretty high price on it. I'm glad I didn't win it now because I certainly didn't need to spend any more money trying to pay off my PayPal credit right now. But there were some beauties. So let's go ahead and take a closer look. As I said, these are all Trilogos. This seller is one I've bought from in the past. He's over in the UK. He had a couple of really nice examples that sold at auction. First is the Anakin Skywalker. And this has the smaller blister. I'm assuming this is either a blister miscard where sometimes they put the wrong blister for a certain character. It tended to happen a lot for last 17 figures, or it could be a Meccano. I don't know. I don't know these well enough to be able to tell you firmly what this is. But, you know, a lot of my last 17 Trilogos have, not a lot, but several of them have this smaller blister, and AFA labels it PBP blister. And I've heard from a number of people say, no, it's not a PBP blister. It's just a miscard blister, meaning they selected the wrong blister to put the figure inside before they sealed it. And I know that the Meccano factory did also have a situation where they were closing up and they just were slapping stuff on left and right. And that's where a lot of the miscards come from. But anyway, this one has the smaller blister for the Anakin at auction, AFA 85, punched example. That one sold for 420 pounds, which is $534. And CIB has one where the auction ends tonight, this Sunday. So I'm sure I'll be covering that one in another video. Exact same grade, AFA 85. So we'll see where that one ends up. I think it's pretty much at this price already, if not even higher than that. They also had this beautiful unpunched B-Wing pilot graded AFA 85. And I was going to bid on this, or I did bid on this one, or I was going to, and the auction blew past my number before the auction even got close to ending. So I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to bid on it now. If you remember, the CIB had one, and it might be in this lot. I can't remember. I think it sold for around $510. It was an AFA 85 unpunched, just like this one. This one sold for 460 pounds, which is $585 plus shipping to the U.S. So this would have been easily over $600, closer to $650 for me in the U.S., whereas the one that CIB had sold for $510 and was already here in the U.S. So that's a surprisingly expensive Trilogo for a fairly common character. The B-Wing on the B-Wing pilot on the Trilogo card bag is very expensive and high grade, and that certainly supports the case there. Here was an AFA 85 Weequay punched example. That one sold for $477 US dollars. There was another one in a different batch that AFA CIB had at auction, and it sold for even more money than this one. So you just can't predict what the prices are going to be. I have an AFA 80, and I paid, I think, around $350 for mine. But this AFA 85 sold for $477. So there you go on that one. The other one that they did have was this Chief Chirpa. It was a UKG 85. It was a punched example. Now, this is one I did pick up recently from the Biker Scout Bunker, which is Matt and a gentleman named Matt. And mine was an AFA 85 punched example. I think I want to say I paid around $400, somewhere in that ballpark. But this UKG 85 sold for $318 plus shipping, or 250 pounds. So, you know, obviously UKG high grade typically does not sell for as much as AFA in the same grade. That's true for collector archive services, CAS as well. There are always exceptions. There are exceptions to every rule. But in general, AFA commands the highest prices. And I would say that this supports that, given that we've seen some higher grade, high grade Chief Chirpas sell recently for even more money than what I spent on mine. So It's just crazy what AFA commands, and we'll show them in a second. But here was an ungraded one. This was obviously not in the greatest condition, but it was unpunched, and it's General Lando Calrissian, unpunched, but it did obviously have some creasing at the top of the card there on the left-hand side. So that kept the price down a little bit. And it looks like the blister's starting to yellow, which, you know, I think it's a weird thing that a lot of the last 17 blisters on these Trilogos are the ones that yellow a lot. I can't tell you why that is, but it seems like the most commonly yellowing blisters are last 17 figures, and we got some more examples of that coming up in a second. But it's very slight. It's not like a major deal breaker or anything, but, you know, this one obviously is probably at best like a 75 grade, probably more like a 70 grade. I don't know. It just depends on how harshly they grade that crease in the upper left, because it's pretty pronounced. But it's still sold for $328. That's about as cheap as you're going to get, right? Given that General Lando's loose complete can go for, what, $250 or so at least. So I would argue that $328 for this free shipping is a pretty good deal, mint on card. So great deal there. All right, on to collectible investment brokerage, which obviously is associated with AFA. They also do consignments, and they've done, as you guys know, if you watch my channel, they've done a bunch of high-grade Palitoy German Parker Trilogos over the last 3 to 6 months. I don't know where they're getting them all. I really don't. But it's almost like they had a warehouse find and they're just grading them all, or maybe some collector had cases upon cases of them and he's slowly grading them and selling them off through CIB. I don't know what the answer is, but they've had multiples for different characters. They've all been very high grade. I know that I've added a number of them recently to my collection, as you guys have seen in my unboxing video recently and in past unboxing. I've probably added 6 or 7 this year. It's hard to win, though. It's hard to win these CIB auctions because they attract a lot of big money, and you'll see that as we get progressively more expensive on these. But at least for this batch, here we go. This one was the Prune Face Unpunched AFA 85. A buddy of mine just bought one of these for around $275, also from CIB. That was a few weeks ago. So I was going to bid like $280, you know, somewhere in that ballpark, but it blew past that number and sold for $315. So this one went up a little bit from what he paid, you know, even a couple of months ago. Here's the AT-ST driver, AFA 85 unpunched, and it does seem like the unpunched examples do command a big price premium. It is harder to find unpunched Trilogos. A lot of them came out of the factory punched, but when they do appear unpunched, they do tend to command big money, and this is a good example of that at $387. We've seen some other AFA 85 punched examples for this particular character go in the, you know, sub $300. So once you get unpunched, though, all bets are off, it seems like. Now, the other thing you got to be careful about when you're buying, or if you're bidding on any of these CIB auctions, I'm sure there's going to be even more coming, is the fact that a lot of these were graded a while ago. Some of the grading labels, you know, when you look up the certification number, they date back to like 2006, 2009, 2010. And the label may not be exactly correct. So you got to look at the auction description for some of them. Some of them are obvious where the bubble has yellowed, right? This one's pretty obvious, right? If you look at Wicket, the Wicket has very clearly yellowed since grading. And CIB does disclose that in the auction description. They don't disclose it in the auction title. And I do think that some people bid a lot of these up without really realizing that they are yellowed. So, you know, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe people don't particularly care. They just want a high grade example. But this is one where it has yellowed since grading. There's no yellow designation on the label. It is a Wicket AFA 85 unpunched, and it sold at $455. So again, just be aware, because some of them are less obvious than this Wicket, and we'll show you some here in a second. Okay, so here is that B-Wing palette. So just like the other one, it's an AFA 85 unpunched, no price sticker. This one sold for $510, and the other one sold for $585 over in the UK, plus shipping if you happen to be in the US. So this would have been closer to $650 versus $510 plus $20 shipping. So that's that's 2 different data points now that show that the B-Wing pilot is a very expensive character in high grade on the Trilogo. And it's kind of odd because he is, a fairly common character, but it is a cool card back. I mean, that's a really great looking card back. with the B-wing there. So a couple of data points there. Now here's one that's less obvious, right? This is a Warwick AFA 85, and it also has the Clipper catalog on the back. So this was graded before they even started denoting Clipper catalog. They usually put it below the character name, and they say Clipper catalog. So this one's got the Clipper catalog. It's unpunched, no price sticker, but it has yellowed since grading. As you can see very clearly, it's more faint than the Wicked example, but you just got to be aware of these things. And again, they disclose it in the description for the auction, but a lot of people don't even look at the description. I know I've been guilty of that in the past, where I don't even bother looking at the description. So just be aware as you're bidding on these that some of these have yellowed. That one still sold for $536 though, so that's a big number there. Next up was the Dengar. This was the German Parker. So you can see there, it's got the longer, thinner hang tab, and then the bright back, the bright yellow back. So this is how you can spot a German Parker Trilogo versus a standard Palatoy. So if you look at like these, let's see if we can find one without any punch to it. All these were unpunched. Every one of these unpunched here. So here you go. So this one has the darker yellow back and a thicker, shorter hang tab type. So you can see how dark that yellow is versus the Dengar, where it's a much brighter yellow and a thinner hang tab. So that's how you can spot the German Parker card backs. It's not labeled as such, but they have started labeling it more recently. So this was a Trilogo AFA 85 Dengar, beautiful example, $560 on that one, which is kind of right in line with where they've been selling. Tebow is another one that is usually pretty desirable. This one was unpunched, AFA 85, and sold for $587. So that's a pretty healthy number for a more common Trilogo. It's not super common, but it is more common than some of the ones we're going to be looking at. Here is the R2-D2 sensor scope. This was a punched example, AFA 85. This one has a little bit different blister type than mine. So again, it's kind of the similar blister to the Anakin, where it's a little more form-fitting with an angle to the blister. And I still think that this is probably a Meccano, but I don't know for a fact because I just don't know Trilogos that well. You think I would, given how many that I have in my collection, but I just don't know the blister types and how to match it up with the correct factory. And even this one looks like it has yellowed since grading. It's very faint there, but this one has yellowed since grading. And straight 85s, but it has yellowed. At $660, that's a little bit lower than where they've been selling, $750-ish, for clear blister standard bubble types. So this was just a little bit of a bubble variation versus even the one that I have in my collection. So $660 on that one. Here was the Biker Scout. This is the standard etched edge blister type. This is a very common blister type where it's got little grooves in all four corners. And this one was another AFA 85 punched example. And that one sold for $735. I have an AFA 85 punched example. I bought mine about 1.5 years, 2 years ago for about $650. So that's up just a little bit versus the price I paid, but that's about the same. You know, it's in that ballpark. Next up, now this is an interesting one because I just bought this exact item from Hakes. Okay, now mine's an AFA 80 unpunched just like this one. The only difference on this one is that this is 80, 80, 85 for the subscores. Mine is 80, 75 for the blister, 85 for the figure. So I've got one subscore that's slightly lower than this. Now, I bought mine again in the last Hakes session, and I paid all in, including shipping and the buyer's premium, I paid $478. This one sold for $835, which I was shocked by. I thought it would sell probably in the same ballpark as what I paid for mine, but this one blew past that number. And it is better. I would say that this one presents a little bit nicer than mine. My blister is not quite as clean as this one, but it doesn't have all these little scratches on the front, which that's probably from the paint on the figure. You know, when a lot of these were inserted into the blisters while the paint was still wet. I learned that one from Blacked Out Ewoks, who's a fellow YouTuber. I don't know if that's the case here or what's going on there, but you know, I would argue that mine is just as good as this one. I really would. I would say that the blister is maybe slightly better, but I don't have all those ugly scratches like this one does. So $478, and that one literally closed 4 days before this one closed, and this one sold at $835. So crazy to see the difference. Now this is the hybrid Trilogo, and that's another thing we've talked about, right? Is that certain characters like Hammerhead, Red Snaggletooth, Greedo, the Cloud Car Pilot, and both the white and black Bespin guards. They appeared on these where they were transitioning to a different card front for Palatoys, but they kept the Tri-Logo backs. And so I think it's only those 6 characters. I don't think that there is a Walrus Man hybrid Tri-Logo. Those 6 characters that I just named are the only ones that appear on these hybrids, with the most expensive being usually the Cloud Car Pilot. But they are very pricey. There was an AFA 75 that CIB sold in one of these auctions, and it went for almost $3,000. And it was a 75 grid. So it just shows you how expensive that one is. But this one definitely went a little higher than I expected, just given what I paid for. I mean, people who know Hakes, I mean, most likely would have known about that one, but I paid $478, and then 4 days later, one with a slightly better one sub-score, same overall score. There's nothing higher than an 80 on the population report. I looked it up. I think there's like 14 AFA 80s for this hybrid Tri-Logo. And so I got one of the 14, and then here was another one that sold, and it sold for a lot more than what I paid. So I'm very happy with what I paid for mine. Another one that really shocked me on the upper end of the scale was this Han Solo Hoth unpunched AFA 85. I also have an unpunched AFA 85. In all fairness, I bought mine probably about 5 years ago. I paid $475 for mine, I think, somewhere in that ballpark. And this one sold for $1031. So that turned out to be a pretty good buy that I made 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe after you factor in inflation, maybe not. But that one did sell for $1031, which I was shocked by. I was thinking this would go $700 to $750. So big number there. This was a really interesting one. I had no idea where this one was going to sell. I assume that this is the only one on the population report. I did not look it up. But this is the AT-AT driver, but this one has no emblems on the helmet. So it looks really cool. It's labeled no logo on helmet, AFA 85. And I bet that this is probably a one-of-one type of situation. I bet there's no other ones out there. And the price obviously reflects that it sold for $1165. So very cool item, though. That's a really cool factory error. They just forgot to put the emblems on before they put it in the blister. So pretty awesome looking factory error, and it sold for big money at $1,165. Here's one that I have no idea why this one sold so high. This is the Bib Fortuna, which is not a terribly uncommon Tri-Logo. This one had the single score. So this was graded a long time ago when they didn't even have subscores. AFA didn't even have subscores. It was an AFA 85 though. So now I've got a UKG 80. Okay. I'm not saying it's comparable to this, but I didn't pay $1,204. I paid $175 for mine. This is an AFA 85, admittedly, but it's only a single score, and it sold for $1,204. I mean, that is an insane number for an old label AFA 85. But the market is what the market is on some of these, and I guess just because there has not been a high-grade Bib Fortuna in a while, that does tend to cause pent-up demand to overbid. And I would say that this is a drastic overbid from my perspective, but if you collect AFA 85s and that's all you collect and money's no object, then you're going to be spending big money if you get 2 people that have that same mindset. And so 2 people put in nuclear bids and it sold for $1,204. So big number there. Now here's another one where you got to be careful. This one had a yellowed blister. This is the EV99 unpunched AFA 90. AFA 90. Straight 90s for the subscore, but it was a yellowed blister. At first blush, you're like, no, it's not. Well, this blister, on the EV99 is a large blister. It's got this little flare piece that flares out. And if you look at the name pill, you'll see very clearly that the blister has yellowed since grading. So it's still sold for $1325 because it is an AFA 90. I'm sure it's one of only 1 or 2 out there, but it is a yellowed blister. So this grading label is no longer up to date because it doesn't have the Y designation. Again, people may not care about this stuff. I'm just trying to show you items that have yellowed since grading. So if you bid on stuff in your price range, that you factor that in, okay? I'm not saying that this is a bad buy or a great buy. I'm not saying either one. I'm just making you aware that, $1325, yes, that's a lot of money, but it was an AFA 90, but it has yellow since grading. So there's a lot of pluses and minuses with this item, but that's what somebody was willing to pay despite the yellowing. Next up is an Amanaman. This one was a beautiful example, graded AFA 85. I didn't see any problems with this one. This one has the £1 59 pence price sticker that was factory applied before they actually shipped out from the Palitoy factories. So that's a beauty. I've got a couple that have that sticker on there, but it was in pretty impeccable condition. Very tough to get this one with that quality of a blister because the Amon blister is so large and so fragile. It's so thin that it's just, you'd never see an AFA 85. I mean, I bet there's less than, 5 that are on the population report. And it sold for big money as a result. $14.25 was the final number on that one. Really cool card image on that one as well. Here's the one I bid on. I did bid on this. I finished second. I bid $14.50. It sold for $14.75, and that's IG88. And this one is hard to find, period, in any grade. It's just not one. It's kind of like the Emperor's Royal Guard, although the ERG has gone up to like stupid numbers lately. I mean, we saw one that sold for over $6,000 lately. I knew we wouldn't go for that, but it was hovering around 900 as the auction was ending. I put in a nuclear bid of $14.50, and I said, if I don't get it, I don't get it. And I didn't. I finished second. AFA 85 though, and it would have looked really nice in my Trilogo collection, but it's just not one you see pop up very often, and especially in that grade. So I gave it a go. I didn't win it, and I'm okay with that. I'm actually happy about it because I've got a pretty substantial PayPal credit balance with the ones I have picked up this year. So I'm finishing off the year. I'm done for the year. I'm very happy with what I've gotten, and I'm just going to focus the next few months on paying down my PayPal credit. So that one was a beauty though, and I think really in the grand scheme of things, $14.75 is very fair for what that is. That's how I feel about it, but maybe I'm biased since I did bid on it, but $14.75 was a very fair deal for what that is, I think. Finally was an AFA 90 Darth Vader, and that is a beauty. Obviously one of the main characters in high grade. You're gonna spend a lot of money, and we have seen some other AFA 90s. Clear blister, no issues there. Unpunched, no price sticker. I mean, this is as good as it gets for a Trilogo Darth Vader. And it sold for big money accordingly. AFA 80s, you're probably in the 500 to 700 range. AFA 85s, I would say comfortably 900 to 1,000, if not even above that slightly. AFA 90, that's when you start getting into the big boy money. And it's always multiples of what an AFA 85 goes for. And that this is probably about 2.5 times what an AFA 85 would go for at $26.50. So absolutely massive number, but it's an incredible item. AFA 90. I would wager that you hold on to this for 10 years, slap it on, Hakes or Heritage. I mean, we just saw that AFA 90 32B Yoda, old label, no subgrades, that sold on Hakes recently for over $16,000. I can only imagine what this one would go for on Hakes, in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. It would go for a lot of money, in my opinion. And probably that $26.50, it'll probably sell at multiples of that, if I had to guess. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's just very tough to find something in such a high grade, especially for one of the main characters like Darth Vader. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look. Please do leave me a like if you enjoyed this video. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.